deaths are something we should be caring about. And I wonder, if they were done by God, would they still hold the same moral weight? Because I know that the flood happened and the entire earth was killed, and no one seems to think that that puts any moral weight on God's behavior. So I wonder, are you just saying that because man killed man, that's where there's an element of violation, and you're what you say the moral absolute? Are you saying that God's outside of a moral absolute and thus amoral?
No, God's not outside of a moral absolute, but God's different than us. I would say this, that if you bow down and worship me, if I receive that worship, that would be wrong. In my worldview, if you bow down and worship Jesus of Nazareth, that would be right. It'd be wrong for me to accept worship because of who I am. It's right for Jesus to accept worship because of who he is. So there are some moral commands that man is given that don't apply to God. The reason why God has the right to take what we would call innocent human life, although in reality there is no totally innocent human life, we're born sinners, we're born fallen, but God as the giver of life is sovereign over life, so he can take life, whereas human beings are not, Job said the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And so that's within the Christian worldview. Now somebody can reject the Christian worldview, but then you have the other problem, and that is, how do you condemn Adolf Hitler's actions as being morally wrong? You've lost the foundation for morality.
But that would assume that morality is only by God. Does God follow morality, or does God know what morality is? And if that's true, it's unchanging, then why did God change morality by the different commandments, the different covenants? And then also you have the issue that God allows certain things, like allows rape, allows killing, even of babies, in the Old Testament specifically. But even Jesus says it's okay to be slaves. So slavery is okay as long as, what exactly?
Well, the Bible, you're mentioning a lot of stuff. There's different views among Christians on how the Mosaic law applies, if at all, today. There's a very great richness, believe me, a richness that Richard Dawkins knows nothing about. There's a great richness in Christian thought. It's been around for a long time. Every one of the things that you're bringing up, Christianity has addressed. Now, when you talk about slavery, what you have to acknowledge is the Bible was not written as a political action guidebook. The primary reason for the writing of the Bible is the saving of human souls. And slavery has been here since the fall. It's been around a long time. Now, if you want to look at all the nations that ended slavery, because slavery is still legal. In countries where there's been no heavy Christian influence ever in its history, slavery is still legal. But the first place on the planet Earth, I believe, that ended slavery was in the late 1700s, about 1790s, was New York State. I think the second place was a territory in America that had not achieved statehood yet. And then we started having free states, and there were the slave states. The third place, I believe it was New Zealand. The fourth place, Wilberforce in Great Britain. And then the fifth place, the United States of America as a whole, the Civil War. And what do they all share in common? The Christian worldview. So the early abolitionists were not these great atheists out there saving the day. They were Bible-believing Christians. And so I think once a culture gets saturated with the gospel and great numbers come to Christ, then they start thinking, well, wait a minute, now we need to try to apply the principles taught in the Bible to society in general. And when you logically apply the Christian worldview to things like slavery, you get the abolishing of slavery. When you try to apply Darwinian evolution in a logical manner, which was even difficult for Charles Darwin, you get some real ugly things. But there's an awful lot of things that you address, but I would say don't look to Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens. In fact, a lot of the atheist philosophers that I debate are embarrassed by those guys. Dawkins spends a page and a half trying to refute Thomas Aquinas' thought and seems to be oblivious to the fact where Aquinas' thought starts where Aristotle's thought ended. So you've got thousands of pages of Aristotelian thought forming the foundation for Aquinas' arguments for God's existence, and it seems like Dawkins is just unaware of that. John Warwick Montgomery noted that when at the University of Chicago, he was the librarian there, and he found that, and he had been a librarian at some Christian seminaries, and he found that the Christian seminaries had all the leading atheist philosopher works and other non-Christian thinkers' works, but he found in the University of Chicago, they're almost not represented by any of the latest thinking. So you get guys who try to argue against what Aquinas said, assuming that they've read him, and not even known that, and act like there hasn't been, 600, 700, 800 years since then, and Thomists, the followers of Aquinas' thought, have come a long way during that period. But I would say there are answers to those objections that you've raised, and I think the alternative, to be totally honest with you, is not real refreshing. I had a brilliant 18-year-old Swedish atheist named Albin that took my one-semester course, Philosophy of Religion, and we had some really good dialogues. He was very honest, and he was very brilliant. So I got him to admit things that atheists can just kind of brush over in debates. But I got him to admit, when I asked him, if there is no God, can you condemn the cruel actions of Adolf Hitler as evil for all people at all times and all places? And his response was, he said, I don't like what he did. And I said, big deal, I don't like strawberry ice cream. Okay, was it wrong for all people at all times and all places? And eventually he came to admit, no, it wasn't wrong for all people at all times and all places. I said, based on that alone, I would get rid of my atheistic worldview. So just the fact that I could call evil, evil, I think gives anybody who believes in the existence of a personal moral God a high ground. Now, you also mentioned something there where did the morality come from? Well, God is good. See, God doesn't will something and then it arbitrarily becomes good. The good is not arbitrary. God can only will that which is good. At the same time, the good is not a standard above God. God's will is only subject to his good nature. And so the good actually flows from God's nature. Now, God did at times give temporary laws for different people in different situations. And that's what a big, robust debate among Christian scholars is, which of the Old Testament commands still apply today and which ones do not apply. And there's different schools of thought. I don't have time to go over the theonomist position, the dispensational position, and I'm somewhere in between the two. But let me get to this gentleman back there. Yeah.
This